In a quiet little town, there lived a man who often found comfort in silence. He sat before an old television. The screen flickered with the fading color of time, showing a home video from years ago, a father and his little daughter laughing together beneath a great old tree. The leaves above them swayed like they were laughing too, sunlight dancing across their faces. The father in the video chased her with playful energy, pretending to stumble while she ran with carefree joy. It was a moment so ordinary once, yet so precious now. Watching it, the man felt the years weigh heavily on him. He tried to smile, but the laughter on the screen only deepened the ache in his chest. Quietly, tears slipped down his face as he remembered the sound of her voice, her laughter, the small moments that used to fill his days with meaning. Once, when she was younger, she had raised her voice in embarrassment about something trivial, that their clothes were washed together. He had laughed and asked what was wrong with that, not understanding her frustration. She had only replied, "Never mind," in that tone that children use when they cannot quite explain their feelings. It was such a small thing, yet now, in the lonely silence of his home, he remembered it with aching clarity. Every word, every sigh, every "never mind" was a memory now unreachable. The morning sun crept through the curtains, beginning another day of routine. The daughter, now a teenager, prepared for school with the quiet energy of someone used to rushing. Her father stood by the kitchen table, watching her pack her bag, wanting to say something but not knowing how. They left home around the same time, she heading down one road, he another. But as fate often plays its quiet tricks, their paths crossed again at the train station. She stood chatting with a friend, her laughter light and carefree, until her foot caught a step and she tripped forward. A young man nearby caught her before she could fall. Embarrassed, she mumbled thanks and hurried away, cheeks burning. The boy smiled awkwardly, watching her disappear into the crowd. Later that day, as she walked home, the same boy caught up beside her, trying to make conversation. She listened politely but said little, and when her father saw them from across the street, suspicion and concern flickered in his eyes. He tried to approach, but she avoided his gaze, walking faster as if nothing had happened. That weekend, they drove to visit her grandfather. The air around the old house was thick with nostalgia, filled with the faint scent of wood and earth. Her mother decided she would stay behind with the grandfather for a few days, wanting to take care of him. The daughter, restless, said she would rather go home. Her father insisted she listen to her mother, but frustration built between them until, in a small accident of anger, he pulled at her earphones and broke her headset. Silence fell like a curtain after the snap. Her eyes welled with hurt, and he immediately regretted it, but neither spoke. Just then, her grandfather appeared from the porch, his gentle voice breaking the tension. He smiled and pointed to the great tree standing proudly in the yard, its branches stretching wide into the fading sky. "That old tree has been here longer than any of us," he said softly. "They say if you pray sincerely beneath it, your wish will come true." The daughter listened half-heartedly, thinking it just another story of the old days, while her father gave a polite laugh. None of them knew that this story would soon become their truth. The father and daughter drove home. The road was slick and glistening with reflected lights. They spoke little, both lost in their thoughts. Then, in a blink, a car from the opposite direction swerved into their lane. Screeching tires, flashing lights, a rush of chaos, and darkness swallowed everything. When they opened their eyes again, the world had changed. Hospital lights glowed faintly above them. Machines hummed softly. The father turned his head, but something was wrong. The body he saw was his, and the voice that cried out in confusion came from her lips. They stared at each other in horror, realizing what had happened. Somehow, impossibly, they had switched bodies. Panic rose between them as they tried to make sense of it. Their voices, their gestures, everything was wrong. The father, trapped in his daughter's body, spoke in disbelief. The daughter, trapped in her father's body, could hardly breathe from the shock. They promised to keep calm, to find a way to reverse it, though neither had any idea how. Desperate for answers, the father remembered an old friend, a psychiatrist. They visited him, but as they explained their situation, the man burst into laughter, thinking it a strange joke. "You too have a wild imagination," he said, waving them away. Embarrassed and frustrated, they left his office without help. The father, still in his daughter's body, wandered aimlessly and thought perhaps a beer might help him calm down. But at the convenience store, the clerk refused to sell it to him. After all, in appearance, he was now a minor. It hit him then just how difficult youth could be, how every small thing was restricted, watched, and judged. They agreed not to tell the mother about the switch. "She'll never believe us," the father said, and the daughter, in his body, nodded nervously. But their odd behavior could not go unnoticed. The mother watched them closely, sensing something strange, though she misread it entirely, thinking perhaps her husband had bribed their daughter or struck some strange deal to get her to behave. The confusion only deepened the quiet tension at home. Later, they called the grandfather to ask about the legend of the old tree. His calm voice over the phone said that sometimes, wishes made under it could tie souls together in mysterious ways. "It will pass in 7 days," he said. "Until then, learn from each other." 7 days. That was all they had to survive, to live each other's lives and understand what it meant to walk in the other's shoes. The next morning began the strangest week of their lives. The father, trapped in a teenage body, had to attend school. The daughter, suddenly inhabiting her father's adult life, had to go to work at his office. They exchanged detailed instructions, how to behave, what to say, who to trust. Still, nothing could truly prepare them. At school, the father tried to blend in but quickly realized how foreign it all felt, the noise, the gossip, the constant pressure to fit in. He found himself drawn to a quiet student sitting alone, a shy nerd who spent her time reading. Meanwhile, the daughter found herself walking through the bustling halls of her father's workplace, surrounded by adults discussing things she barely understood. When a meeting began, she sat nervously, listening as they debated company strategies. The topic turned to an old advertising model her father had approved. Speaking impulsively, she said the model was outdated. The room fell silent. Some frowned, others stared, but a few nodded in agreement. She had no idea her honesty would echo far beyond that moment. That evening, at a company dinner, a client asked her to perform, a tradition of sorts. She hesitated but remembered she was supposed to be her father. Gathering courage, she danced playfully, not like an executive but like the teenager she truly was. The clients laughed and applauded, charmed by her spontaneity, all except one, whose stare lingered too long. When she realized his intentions were not innocent, her joy turned to anger. That night, she posted a video exposing his behavior, sending ripples through the office. It was reckless, but it came from a place of justice she didn't yet understand. They exchanged phones, reviewing each other's days. The father frowned at the chaos she had caused at his office. The daughter groaned at how awkwardly he had handled her friends at school. Both saw flaws in the other's world, and for the first time, they began to understand how much unseen effort the other's life required. The following day brought new lessons. The father noticed a pair of jeans in a store window, stylish, bright, far from what he would normally wear. Thinking it would make his daughter happy, he bought them. When he arrived at school wearing them, everyone stared and whispered. Still, for a brief moment, he understood what it meant to express oneself freely. At work, the daughter was called to the general manager's office about the viral post. She stood her ground, saying firmly that no one should tolerate harassment. Her conviction surprised the manager and herself. Later, at school, the father asked the shy student to study together. She refused at first, wary of his persistence, but eventually agreed. When he returned home, waving cheerfully to his best friend from the doorway, he forgot that to everyone else, he looked like his daughter. The confused expression on the friend's face made him laugh for the first time in days. Exams came, and the father struggled terribly. Numbers and dates blurred together, his patience running thin. Meanwhile, the daughter, in her father's body, gave advice to a coworker about love. The man, desperate for help, begged her to teach him how to speak to women. She offered simple advice about honesty and kindness, only for him to bumble it completely later. She sighed, realizing her father must deal with this kind of foolishness daily. Days passed, and report cards were posted. Her name was near the bottom, 29th place, second to the lowest. The teacher called for her father, and when he, still in her body, attended the meeting, he was furious at himself for failing so badly. She used his anger to her advantage, convincing him to let her go on a date with the boy who had helped her before. Reluctantly, he agreed, but secretly followed. On the bus, the boy leaned closer, about to kiss her, when suddenly her father, in her body, burst out shouting, "No!" They went home together, pretending to be a couple just to tease him. That night, she wanted to say goodbye to the boy properly but could not, trapped as her father. So, through the window, she waved quietly, while he, in her body, stood nearby watching with an ache he couldn't explain. The next morning arrived with tension and anticipation. It was the day of the big company event, the Changeprix Revolution. Her father's speech was prepared, but it was she who had to deliver it. The instruction was simple: read the script and smile. But as she spoke before the crowd, something in her shifted. She looked at the faces of the people and said the truth, that the product was too expensive, that ordinary families would never afford it. The crowd murmured. The CEO's face darkened. "Will you take responsibility for that?" he demanded afterward. The result was swift: the entire team was laid off. Shocked and desperate, she chased after him, begging him to reconsider, but he drove away without looking back. Just then, the father, still in her body, arrived, riding a bike as fast as he could to stop the chaos. The car came too quickly. In one terrible instant, she was hit and thrown aside. Hospital lights again. The world blurred in pain and guilt. The daughter, trapped in her father's injured body, opened his phone and found it filled with photographs, all of her. Every image, every memory, captured quietly through the years. She began to weep, realizing how deeply he had loved her even when she misunderstood him. Through tears, she whispered apologies, telling him she had hated him for the wrong reasons, and that she now understood. Outside, the wind stirred. A single leaf from the old tree drifted through the hospital window, gliding softly through the air before settling between them. A faint glow surrounded it, and then everything shifted once more. The pain faded, the confusion lifted. When they opened their eyes, they were themselves again. The father awoke, gasping, looking around until he saw his daughter walking down the corridor. She turned, their eyes met, and both began to cry. For the first time, they embraced with pure understanding. No words, no resentment, just love. The hospital walls around them seemed to hum softly with relief. Days passed, and life resumed its gentle rhythm. The air between them was different now, lighter, kinder. They shared breakfast without arguing, took small walks together, even laughed at old jokes. The daughter held up her phone to take a selfie. Just as they smiled, her phone rang. It was the boy. She laughed and ran off, leaving her father shaking his head, pretending to be angry but smiling anyway. Later, as the family sat beneath the tree, her parents began bickering lightly about work. She laughed and warned them not to argue too much, or it might happen again. They all got into the car, the mother in the driver's seat despite not having a license. As the engine started, they caught each other's eyes in the mirror and screamed. The screen of memory fades to black,